Welcome. I would like to welcome you to another episode of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And if you would do me a favor, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, so anything will help. But here's where we'll start. So I just concluded my divisional breakdown. For the last 8 episodes, I broke down a division in the NFL. And what I want to do today is predict which teams make it to the playoffs. As we know, this is going to be the first year in the NFL that 7 teams are making it to the playoffs for each conference. So what I want to do is I want to predict who makes it, who doesn't make it, and have the conversation about that. Let's start with the NFC. So if you saw my divisional breakdowns, I pretty much had, the easiest one to do, in my opinion, as far as who would win the division was, I'll say the NFC North. The NFC North to me was the easiest. You have Green Bay, you have the Minnesota Vikings, you have the Chicago Bears, and the Detroit Lions. To me, it's Green Bay. Green Bay is the cream of the crop in that division. While I do think that the Bears are going to be decent this year, and I do think that while I don't think the Vikings will be good, I think the Vikings will be better than they were last year. I think last year they were plagued with defensive deficiencies and everything, but I do think that they will be better. However, even with the turmoil and everything going on with Green Bay, I still think that Green Bay is the cream of the crop. You have the best quarterback in the division by a long shot in Aaron Rodgers. You have the best wide receiver in the division, in my opinion, in Devontae Adams. You don't have the best running back, of course, but they have a decent running back in Aaron Jones. I just think it's going to be Green Bay. So I think Green Bay probably out of all the teams, even though the Bucs are good, out of all the teams in the NFC, I think Green Bay is the lock. It's hard, unless, of course, knock on wood, Aaron Rodgers gets hurt. It's hard to me to see a path where Green Bay does not make the playoffs. Now, do I think that they're going to win, 13-4 or 14-3? No, I don't think that. I do think that there are some things that, and I talked about this in the divisional breakdown. I think that there's some things that Green Bay definitely needs to work on and needs to improve if they want to win a Super Bowl. But I do think that they have the pieces and talent to actually, make it to the playoffs at least, because they're going to win the division. So definitely have Green Bay coming out to represent the NFC North, NFC East. Cowboys. The only reason why I have the Cowboys winning the NFC East is because the Cowboys, as we know, they haven't really lived up to expectation the last few years. In fact, I think they missed the playoffs the last 2 years. But you have the best quarterback in the division. You have probably the second best running back in the division. Of course, we need to see what happens when Saquon Barkley for the Giants gets back. And you have some really good pieces on the offensive side of the ball. You have CeeDee Lamb. You have Amari Cooper. Of course, we were talking about Zeke. Here's the thing about the Cowboys, though, and I talked about this as well in the divisional breakdown. When we think about the Cowboys, of course, quote unquote America's team and this, that, and the third, but if we want a real perception of the Cowboys is a team that just constantly overachieves, and they've been doing that for a while now. Yes, they haven't been to the playoffs in 2 years, even though they've had pretty much the best roster out of the last few years in the NFC East. And, of course, we know about the historic lows for the NFC East for the past few years. But it's like, are the Cowboys a team that you want to bet your money on? I understand that every Cowboys fan think that this is their year. They always say, this is the year, this is the year, this is the year. And, while yes, you can say it's a little bit of delusion. It is what it is. But if you look at the roster, you have some big names. So I would understand if they say, I don't agree with them. I'm never on that boat. But I wouldn't get upset, and I wouldn't be surprised if they say that this is the Cowboys' year. But the Cowboys always, it's just, whether it's an injury, Hell, going into game one, and we'll talk about this a little bit later down the show, Zach Martin, their best offensive lineman, is out due to COVID. And he is the first player, at least this season, out due to COVID. So it's just the Cowboys. It's hard to really bank on the Cowboys. But as we'll talk about in a tad bit, when we talk about the NFC East, it's hard for me to put faith in the Eagles. It's hard for me to put faith in Daniel Jones and the Giants. And we'll talk about Washington. But, I think the Cowboys, by default and by the fact that they have the best quarterback in the division, I think that they're going to represent the NFC East in the playoffs as far as the winner of the division. Of course, the NFC South, it's the Bucs. The Bucs are the best team. You have Tom Brady, you have Gronkowski, you have Chris Godwin, you have Mike Evans, you have Antonio Brown, Scotty Miller, you have Leonard Fournette. Like they're just stacked at every position. They're just stacked at every position, and they came off winning a Super Bowl, and they kept pretty much all their starters. And that was just offense. I didn't talk about Levante David on the defense, Ndamukong Suh on the defense. This team is stacked. Because there's so much uncertainty right now in the NFC South, there's one certainty, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a good team. Do I think that they're good enough to just let me say, as a team, they're good enough to just wipe through a lot of people. No, I don't think that they'll go undefeated. That's unrealistic to think. But I do think that again, one reason why they struggled so much in the beginning of the year last year is because, of course, COVID and not having off season really, and not having a preseason period. This is a new team. A lot of people were new. And, of course, you have a new quarterback in Tom Brady, which takes definitely time to gel and interact with. But you saw towards the end of the season, they were just rolling to the point that they got and won a Super Bowl. So, to me, with no Drew Brees, with no we don't know what's going to happen with Atlanta and how they've been so bad defensively, how that's going to turn around, especially with a new coach, and with who else? And Sam, I don't see even Sam Darnold at his best. I don't see the Carolina Panthers making it to the playoffs. To me, that's probably the second easiest. Well, I'll say probably tied with the easiest lock in the NFC to make the playoffs. To me, it's definitely the Green Bay and the Bucs winning their divisions are locks in my opinion. And then you have the NFC West, and that was my last episode where I talked about the NFC West. The NFC West is the toughest division in my opinion. Of course, the Rams, Seattle, 49ers, and the Cardinals. The reason why I'm picking, shouts out to Ryan Russello of The Ringer. Shouts out to him. He did a video of player comps. Of course, I've done that before, but he did the most recent one. So shouts out to him. And this is not my original thought as far as, but he did bring something. He did a Matthew Stafford comparison, and he did a Matthew Stafford and he said his NBA comp was Kevin Garnett. And I was like, Kevin Garnett, what? But it makes sense. Kevin Garnett was in Minnesota for the longest. He was, of course, that's where he got the name Big Ticket, because nobody was coming to Minnesota unless it was to watch Kevin Garnett play, because the team as a whole was not good, but Kevin Garnett was. But a lot of people were saying that, he's a great player. It's just he couldn't win. And the narrative for Kevin Garnett really changed once he went to Boston and won that championship. Hell, he won one championship to turn the perception of Kevin Garnett around completely. Matthew Stafford has been stuck in Detroit for the longest, and while he's been putting up ungodly numbers, and he's been incredible, even though he's dealt with injury, and no, the injuries have not put him out the game because he's played through injury. He has had his fair share of injury, but Matthew Stafford has been incredible. And it's just the perception is he's good, but he's not that good because he wasn't able to, lead Detroit anywhere. He wasn't able to take Detroit out of obscurity. You know what I mean? But I feel now that you put him on the Rams and, has a really good offensive line, has a great defense, and has really good pieces on the offensive side of the ball, which whether we're talking about Cooper Kupp, Robert Wood, and of course a great coach in Sean McVay. I think that this we're really gonna see just how good Matthew Stafford is. We know he's good. There's no way. Even you could be god awful. You can be the worst franchise in the world. But if you're the record holder at the quarterback position for majority of the records for the quarterback position for a team, you're really good. Matthew Stafford is a great player. It's just it's funny. The same argument can kind of be said for Sam Bradford. But it's like we don't really know yet. It's like, okay, we know Sam Bradford came into the league highly touted, one of the better quarterbacks coming out of USC, but we didn't know how good he was. And we don't really know how good he is because of who he's played with. He's played with a god-awful offensive line. He's played with really no talent when he was with the Jets. So now the difference is he was so awful with the Jets when Matthew Stafford was still incredibly good for the Lions. It just is they both, even though Matthew Stafford was great, Sam Darnold was offered. Both of them equated to no wins, really. I'm not going to say no wins, but didn't really get much wins. So it's like you were really about to see Matthew Stafford. And I'm saying all that to say, I think because of the pieces around Matthew Stafford and the fact that this Rams team was able to go to a Super Bowl or get to a Super Bowl. Now I understand that there were different players. Todd Gurley was really good at that time. Ndamukong Suh was on that team. I understand that, but I do think that the fact that you were able to get to a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. And I'm not saying Jared Goff is awful, but Matthew Stafford, in my opinion, is better than Jared Goff. I think that the Lions are going to be really good this year. I mean, not Lions. I think that the Rams are going to be really good this year, seeing as though you have Matthew Stafford, you have the best defensive player in the league in Aaron Darnold. You have arguably the best cornerback in the league in Jalen Ramsey. So I think that this is going to be a really good team. So, of course, I have the Bucs, the Cowboys, Green Bay, and Rams representing the divisional winners and making it to the playoffs. So now you have the wild cards. You have 3 wild cards. And this was tough. This was tough because I can honestly see the toughest decision was between the Saints and Washington. Now, taking, of course, my bias out of it. I try to do that a lot. Because I mean, yes, I'm a fan of teams, but I try to keep my biases out of it. But here's the reason why I don't think Atlanta's going to make it. I don't think the Panthers can make it. I really don't think the Giants can make it. Definitely don't think the Eagles. I think you can kind of make a case for the Bears. However, they need to get their quarterback position right. I mean, I don't know how long Andy Dalton's going to start before you bring Justin Fields. So the question was between the biggest question was between the Washington football team and the Saints. And here's why I had the question. Here's why I had the question. I had the question because when you talk about the Saints have better players on the offensive side of the ball than the Washington football team. You have Michael Thomas. You have Alvin Kamara. You have Jameis Winston, who I believe at his best is a better quarterback than Ryan Fitzpatrick. The problem is you have this one is the first time that Drew Brees is not there, seeing as though he retired. And you still don't know what's going on with we don't know when we're going to see Michael Thomas. Emmanuel Sanders is gone. Jared Cook is gone. the defense has some retooling. There's a couple good players that are gone there. And it's like there's a lot more question marks with the Saints than there are with Washington. I mean, you know what Washington is. Washington has a gunslinger at quarterback, even though he makes some questionable decisions. And every year, there's going to be a time where he just flattens out because he's not really starting quarterback. That's Ryan Tannehill. However, like I said, he is a gunslinger. He throws the ball everywhere. So, you're going to get a lot of yards from Curtis Samuel. You're going to get a lot of receiving yards from Terry McLaurin. You're going to get a lot of – and I think that Antonio Gibson is going to really have a breakout season. Not to mention, we kind of retooled and fixed the offensive line. Not saying it's the greatest offensive line, but our offensive line is good. And our defense, in my opinion, especially our defensive front, is better than the Saints' defensive front. So I say all that to say, I think Washington is going to make the playoffs. I think you don't need – do I think that they're good enough to win a Super Bowl? Of course not. But you don't need – Ryan Fitzpatrick to win you games, because I think Antonio Gibson and his running ability is going to be really good. I think that the defense is going to definitely keep us in a lot of games. You do not need Ryan Fitzpatrick to win you games. You need him to not lose you games. He's done past stints in different teams. He has lost games. We don't need that. We don't need you to reinvent the wheel. We don't need that. We just need you to be a game manager. There will be times where we need you to maybe get 300 plus receiving yards, but with this receiving core, you can do that. I'm not saying it's the best receiving core, but hey, not to mention, I trust Ryan Fitzpatrick more after what we saw last year. I trust right now. I'm not saying he's a better overall player, but I'm saying right now, I trust Ryan Fitzpatrick more than I trust Jameis Winston right now. Now, yes, Jameis Winston is a better player, but I trust Ryan Fitzpatrick from what I've seen last year compared to what I've seen from him than what I've seen from Jameis Winston. Now, the question is the other two teams. And I don't know. Well, what I said in the divisional breakdown in the NFC West is I think you're going to see this is probably going to be one of the only divisions this is going to be the only division in the NFC where you're going to see more than you're going to see three teams in the playoffs. And that's because I have Seattle and I have 49ers. In my opinion, if you're talking about just strictly roster, and I talked about this on the divisional breakdown, when we talk about strictly roster, the 49ers, to me, have probably the second best roster in the NFC next to the Bucs. The thing is, you had, 30-something players last year get hurt. 30-something players get hurt, and they were big-time players. I mean, Nick Bosa was hurt. Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt a couple times. Or, it was just a lot of players got hurt. And while the question still looms, what are they going to do at the quarterback position between Jimmy G or Trey Lance? This roster is still great. It's still a great roster, both top to bottom, from Raheem Mostert, from Brandon Ayuk. Like, they have an incredible roster. And I think that just the roster and the talent alone, George Kittle, who is arguably the best or the second best tight end in the league, it's like, I think that team is going to win enough games. And when you put that, like, if you threw the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC East, they would be the best division they would be the best team in the division. If you threw the 49ers in the NFC North, they would be the best team. I think that, of course, Aaron Rodgers would be still the best quarterback, but I think the 49ers would be the best team. And they'll be battling between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the NFC South. And because of that, I think that the 49ers is going to win or going to make it to the playoffs as a wild card. And I also think Seattle is going to make it as a wild card team because of the fact that you have Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is arguably top 3 to top 5 quarterbacks in the league. You have Chris Carson, who's a really good running back. You have DK Metcalf. You have Tyler Lockett. They just locked up Dwayne Brown, the offensive lineman. You locked up Jamal Adams. I do think that their problems that they've had for a while still loom. Their offensive line, even though you did lock up Brown, their offensive line still is awful outside of one position. And I think their defense is really spotty, even though you have Wagner, you have Adams. It's really, I mean, you lost KJ Wright, you lost Shaquille Griffin. I think the talent of Russell Wilson will be able to get them to the wild card. I don't think that. I think that it's gonna be I don't think they're good enough to, of course, make it far in the playoffs because of the deficiencies that they have, and we even saw that the last few years. We saw that last year against the Rams when the Seattle played in the playoffs, and when they played against the game before the playoffs, they played against the Bills, and the Bills just destroyed them. But I think it's going to be interesting, and I think that the NFC West is leaps and bounds the best division in the NFC, and because of that, I think you're going to see adding another team definitely throws a different cog into the regular season, a different cog into the way that teams scheme for people. Like, you're gonna see, don't be surprised if you're gonna see a really low. Of course, these teams. I don't think that none of these teams are gonna sweep the division. As far as don't be surprised that when we're talking about the NFC West, don't be surprised. Of course, they beat up on each other, but when you look at their overall schedule, they beat up on a lot of other teams. Like, I think that the NFC West will probably, in the NFC, of course, will probably have the best out of conference or out of division record of everyone in the NFC outside of maybe Tampa Bay. So my playoff for the NFC, my playoff teams are the Bucs, Cowboys, Green Bay, Rams, and for the wild card I have Seattle, 49ers, and Washington. Again, it was really between Washington and New Orleans, and I trust, even though I trust Michael Thomas more than anybody on Washington. I trust Alvin Kamara as far as offensively anybody on Washington. It's just we don't know when we're going to see Michael Thomas. So that's NFC. That's my playoff. Let's go over to the AFC. So to me, the easiest lock is the Bills. In the AFC East, I mean, you have, and that's not saying that the division's bad. I mean, Miami is a really good team with Tua. I think Tua is probably the biggest question mark that they have right now. And I think that we're going to have to see, because hell, Miami is still kind of in the running for Deshaun Watson, so they don't even know if Tua is their guy or not. But I think the biggest question is the Patriots, man. The Patriots, as far as the Patriots team is good enough to make the playoff. I don't think they're good enough to dethrone the Buffalo Bills. But I think the Patriots are good enough to make the playoffs with their team. I mean, they had the most opt-outs last year than any other team due to COVID. And, of course, I think once that happened, a lot of people want to really bash Cam Newton for what happened last year, seeing as though he had like 8 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. But you can tell that once you had 9+ players opt out due to COVID. I mean, and most of them are on the defense, and most of them are your best players on the defense. You pretty much punt on the season. I think that's what they did last year. They punted on the season, which is why you never really heard much about Cam Newton's shortcomings, Cam Newton with COVID and everything, and it really wasn't a problem until this year, because I don't think they're trying to do that again. But I think the easiest one to pick is the NFC East, and that is or the AFC East, and that's the Buffalo Bills. I think the Buffalo Bills arguably can be one of, I'm not even going to call them a sleeper because they made it to the AFC Championship last year. I wouldn't be surprised if you looked up and the Buffalo Bills could be in the Super Bowl. I'll give my prediction for who wins the Super Bowl probably after I do this, but don't be surprised if the Bills dethrone or at least beat the Kansas City Chiefs this year. Because the Kansas City Chiefs have been the cream of the crop of this conference for the past 2 years. Seeing as though they made it to 2 straight Super Bowls. So, but yeah, the AFC East, I have the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills that's just the best team in the AFC East, in my opinion, and probably the best team. Probably the easiest, because I don't think Tua is ready to get them to the playoffs. I don't think Mac Jones is ready to get the New England Patriots to the playoffs, and the Jets are the Jets. So arguably the worst roster in the entire league, probably rivaling the Texans or the Jaguars. So in the AFC East, I have the Bills representing them in the playoffs. Let's move over to the AFC South. AFC South is pretty simple to me. It's the Titans. I think the Titans have. I'm not gonna say that the Titans have the best quarterback right now in Ryan Tannehill. They added Julio Jones. They have AJ Brown. You have Derrick Henry. I mean, that alone will get you a lot of wins. You don't. I think that, of course, defensively, the Colts have the best defensive core, and of course, you need to figure out what you have with Carson Wentz. I do think that the number of unvaccinated players that they have can definitely get in their way, possibly in the regular season, which of course you hope not. But I just think that the Titans are more. There's no way in heaven or hell the Houston Texans, even with Tyrod Taylor, which I'm happy. P.S. I'm happy for Tyrod Taylor, man. From what happened towards the end of the Chargers, what happened that ended his tenure at the Chargers, I'm so happy that he was able to bounce back and now getting starting spot. I hear a lot of people saying, well, of course, the Houston Texans, anyone could. I get that. But what happened with Tyrod Taylor when he was at the Chargers can be not only not only career ending, but life threatening. And the fact that he was able to bounce back and now be a starter again in the league, good for him. But with that being said, I don't think Houston Texans have a shot in hell to make it in the playoffs, and I don't think the Jaguars have a shot in hell to make it, especially seeing as though they have arguably the worst roster in the league. Yes, you have Trevor Lawrence, and it's unfortunate that you lost Travis Etienne, which was a really good, promising young running back. But I think it's the Titans. The Titans have more certainties. Yes, I think that the Colts have a better defense, but there's more certainties with the Titans. I mean, again, you have the best running. You have the best running back in the conference. You have arguably one of the best receiving cores in the conference. So I have the Titans representing the AFC South for the playoffs. Let's go over to the AFC North. No, the AFC West. The AFC West, in my opinion, is the Chiefs. I haven't, until somebody really knocks them off in the conference. I just don't see anybody, especially in the AFC West, beating them. There's a lot of question marks with the Raiders, especially with their recent cuts. I don't know. Let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about that for a second. How long does it take for you? How many question marks? And how long do the question marks need to linger before you make a decision that I don't know if we have the right personnel here, or I don't know if we have the right coach here? I'm never really for anybody losing their job. But this is year 3 year 3 or 4 in the Gruden era. And every single year, whether it's the draft, whether it's cuts, whether it's trades, you never really know what he's doing. And with their recent string of cuts and releases, they released a third or first round pick from 2020. They just released him. And he was hurt all last year. I don't know, man. I don't really get it. But because of all that, and getting back to the point, I don't see them. Yes, you have Derek Carr. Yes, you have Josh Jacobs. Yes, you have Darren Waller. Yes, you have Kenyon Drake. You have Jonathan Abrams. or Jamal Abrams. There's way too many question marks for the Raiders for me to think that they have a shot to dethrone Kansas City. And the Chargers, to me, the Chargers is a sleeper team. We have to wait and see what the Chargers can give you. But I do think that I just don't think they're good enough, or they're better than the Chiefs. I just don't, especially or the Denver Broncos. I mean, we know who Teddy Bridgewater is. Teddy Bridgewater is a good, serviceable quarterback, but he's like an Alex Smith 2.0. He's not gonna throw the ball downfield that much. He doesn't really have a cannon of an arm, but he's not going to make a lot of mistakes. He's just going to do everything right. Now, everything right doesn't always equate in wins, because you have to be able to, put some risk or throw risk to the wind at sometimes, which they don't do, But I just think it's Kansas City. The AFC West is Kansas City Chiefs a division to lose. So I have Kansas City Chiefs making it out of the West. And the question to me, and I talked about this last episode, I think the AFC North is the best division in football. No, I don't. I think the second best division in football, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens, Cleveland Browns, and Cincinnati Bengals. And I'll just say it now. I think that, I know it's really weird for me to say, but I think that the Cleveland Browns are going to win this division, because even though we don't like to admit it, because the Browns it's always fun for the Browns to be the butt of the joke, since they've been the butt of the joke for as long as I can remember. But the Browns are a good team. And as much as, if you don't want to admit it, or as much as you have to, Baker Mayfield has improved year after year after year. And last year they improved. They got to the playoffs. They beat the Steelers in the first round. And they came with a few plays away from beating the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. And this year, I mean, you add a lot of pieces. You get Odell Beckham Jr. back. You add Jadeveon Clowney to the defense. Myles Garrett's back. You still have Nick Chubb, who is one of the most physical backs in the league. As you have Kareem Hunt, who's more of a catch specialist at a running back position. It's hard for me to look at that roster and think that they have arguably the second best roster in all of football. When we just talk about roster and we just talk about talent on paper, they have the second best roster next to the Bucs. It's really on Baker Mayfield. It's really on Baker Mayfield, and I think, because even though we don't like to admit it, we've seen Baker Mayfield improve year after year after year. I think that they're good enough to win the division. I think that their defense is strong enough and good enough, especially with the players that they got this offseason. I think it's good enough to win the division, even with the Ravens, even with the Steelers. I think it's good enough. So I have the Browns representing the AFC North. So my AFC North playoff, as far as winners, is the Chiefs, the Titans, the Browns, and the Bills. Then we get to the wild cards. The wild cards. I'm going to first go on a limb and say my first wild card are going to be the Baltimore Ravens. I think that the Baltimore Ravens arguably have the best defense in the league. They still have Lamar Jackson. Now, the thing that I question most about the Baltimore Ravens as we stand today is their health. They lost J.K. Dobbins for the whole season. They lost Hill, which was a backup running back the whole season. Of course, you have Gus Edwards is cool, but their wide receiver core. It's not the fact that the wide receiver core isn't the greatest, and it hasn't been the greatest for the while, but they're injured. I mean, Sammy Watkins is injured right now. Hollywood Brown's injured right now. Rashad Bateman, the star wide receiver that they got from the draft, is out right now, and that doesn't bode well for a team that their biggest weakness, in my opinion, is throwing the ball. I do think Lamar Jackson is going to continue to improve, but it's hard to do that when you don't have the pieces that you thought you were going to have as the offensive weapons. But I do think that they're still going to be an electrifying team. You still have Marlon Humphreys on the defense. You still have Peters on the defense. Wolf is incredible. You still have Calais Campbell. I think that this team is still what they're good at is what they're going to be great at. They just signed Mark Andrews to an extension, so you know that they're going to definitely use Mark Andrews in the tight ends heavy. Boykins is still in the practice squad, but she's probably going to have to get brought up because of the injuries. I think, and he's like a taller receiver, even though he's not really good at creating separation, but he can go get up and catch it. I think that the Ravens with Lamar Jackson is still, good enough to make the wild card. I don't think that they're, at least roster wise, not better than the Cleveland Browns, but I will trust Lamar Jackson before I trust Baker Mayfield, and that's one reason why I have the Ravens making the wild card. I also have the Steelers making the wild card. Even though the same problems that the Steelers ran into last year is what they have this year, as far as Big Ben is aging quite poorly. Their offensive line still is horrible, but you still have. I mean, you got the young, probably the best running back in the draft in Najee Harris. You have Juju Smith-Schuster, you have Claypool, you have Johnson, you have Williams. They still have an incredible core. But here's what I want to talk about with the Steelers. And this is the thing that's kind of worrying me about my pick now, is this whole TJ Watt situation. So for people that don't know, TJ Watt is looking for a new contract extension. And the Steelers is a team that is historic in not giving players contract extensions before like their contract's up. And I think TJ Watt has like a year left or 2 years left or something like that. But needless to say, he doesn't need a contract extension, but he wants one. I mean, last year came in second in Defensive Player of the Year, arguably can come in first this year. TJ Watt is their best defensive player, and honestly, he's their best player on the team. Here's the thing, man. Especially after how last year ended, I don't understand why you would go. I mean, TJ Watt is holding out, like legit holding out. He hasn't been with the team. He hasn't been doing any practice reps. He hasn't been doing any preseason reps. And a report came out yesterday saying that it's looking like it's not really getting good with the negotiations. So more than likely, if a deal isn't done by Saturday, TJ Watt will not be there game one. And with this and with the question marks being had with Big Ben's future, the offensive line is still being bad. Losing Bud Dupree, not only to injury last year, but losing him, period. I think they went to the Titans. I just don't understand why you wouldn't. I understand your I get it. Okay, I get the fact that the Steelers have the most Super Bowls for a team in NFL history. Oh no, that's not true. I think they're tied with the New England Patriots, but I just don't get why you wouldn't pay your best player, especially if he's worked himself and he has earned a contract extension. So why not pay him the contract extension? Especially when you see last year how he was the most dependable player last year. Even with, I mean, yes, Claypool was good, Williams was good, Johnson was good, but I think the Steelers in general led the league in like pass dropped. And of course, you couldn't trust James Conner. You couldn't trust Snell because the offensive line was god awful. So why would you not pay your most trusted commodity right now? It doesn't make sense to me. But with all that being said, I do still think that, with the defense that they have, I mean, you still have Minkah Fitzpatrick, you still have Joe Hayden. I think that they're still going to be good enough with the offensive piece that they have. I think they'll still be good enough to make the playoffs. And the question to me was just like I was going back and forth between Washington and the Saints. I was going back and forth between the Indianapolis Colts and the LA Chargers. And here's why. And it goes back to I know it's a played out argument, but this is the argument that is had. On paper, the Colts are an incredible team. I mean, you have Jonathan Taylor, you have Carson Wentz, and even though Carson Wentz hasn't really put his best play on tape for the past year or two, he was still a front runner MVP the year that the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. Even though it wasn't because of him, he was a front running MVP until he got hurt. And of course, their defense is incredible. You have DeForest Buckner. They have a great defense. But the question that I have with them is simple. It's like, are they what we're seeing now? I mean, I don't know. And that's hard. It's hard because I don't know. I do not know. Again, you have Carson Wentz, and they got Carson Wentz over let Phillip Rivers, Phillip Rivers now coaching high school football. But again, what Carson Wentz are you getting? Are you going to get the Carson Wentz, the Super Bowl front runner MVP, or MVP front runner Carson Wentz, or are you going to get the Carson Wentz that we've seen since he's been back? Quentin Nelson, best offensive lineman in the league. He was just injured. How is he going to look? Jonathan Taylor, coming off of this would be his second year. How is he going to look? T.Y. Hilton, who hasn't seemed to be able to stay healthy for God knows how long. He's injured right now. How is he going to look? Like, there's a lot of question marks. But then there's also a lot of question marks with the Chargers. How does their new coach handle? They had one of the worst offensive line in the league last year. I know you get Rashawn Slater. How is he able to is he able to be the steady calming remedy that fixes the Chargers offensive line? Yes, you have some incredible pieces on you have Austin Eckler, you have Keenan Allen, you have Mike Williams, but is he able to stay healthy? He seemingly hasn't been able to stay healthy since leaving Clemson. You have some exciting pieces, Joey Bosa on the defense, but can their defense hold up an entire, in big moments, an entire season? So it's a lot of question marks, and I went back and forth. And the thing that I'm going with the Colts. I'm going with the Colts because to me, Jonathan Taylor is a better running back than Eckler. I'm banking on Carson Wentz rejoining Frank Wright, who was the coach that he saw his most success with. I'm banking on Carson Wentz being the Carson Wentz of old, I guess you could say, before the injury and before not being with Frank Wright, or after being with Frank Wright. I think that it's just a lot of question marks with both teams. And good question marks. As far as, I'm not saying like they're just god awful. Like the Chargers are going to be a really good team this year with Justin Herbert. They're going to be a really good team. The Colts, in my opinion, are going to be a really good team. The only question mark that I think could derail them is injury. What Carson Wentz are you getting, and the whole COVID situation. But I have the Colts making the playoffs, man. I have them. I think the Colts are going to be a better team than the Chargers. So my AFC teams are the Chiefs, Titans, Browns, Ravens, Colts, and Pittsburgh. So probably later in the season I'll do like brackets or whatever. But as an early prediction, to me, the AFC, what? The AFC divisional or AFC conference championship, to me, I think it's pretty much set up to be the Chiefs and the Bills. I think the Chiefs have, they've reigned supreme in the division for a while with Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Andy Reid. I just think until I see someone really knock them off, it's hard for me to choose. It's hard for me to say that it's not going to be them. And the Bills have just, especially what I saw last year, I think that they're only going to get better, or they should only get better. And with that, I mean, again, they made it to the AFC Championship last year, and I think that they'll make it to the AFC Championship this year with Josh Allen, with Stephon Diggs. I do think that they need to I don't know if they – I mean, Josh Allen was their best running back last year, and he's a quarterback, and he's not Lamar Jackson, so that's a interesting stat. And their defense still isn't the greatest. Now, it's not god awful, but it's not the greatest. But I do think that they have and will make the improvements to make it to the playoffs. So or make it to the AFC Championship. So I have the Chiefs and the Bills in the AFC Championship. In the NFC Championship, I need to see the Bucs have the best team in the NFC from top to bottom. So until I see someone knock them off, I have the Bucs make it to the NFC Championship. And to me, is honestly between Green Bay because of Aaron Rodgers and the team that they have. You have the Preston brothers, Green Bay, or the Rams. Oof. I'm going to go with the Rams. Yeah. I'm going to go with the Rams because I think a big reason or a big part that held the Rams back last year was the quarterback position and Jared Goff. The fact that, to me, you improved the quarterback position in Matthew Stafford. I have the Bucs and the Rams going to the NFC Championship. I know that's big, especially because we haven't really seen a proven Matthew Stafford as far as winning games like that. But yeah, I have the Bucs and the Rams make it to the NFC Championship. And then of course I have the Bucs. Make it to the Super Bowl, and I think it's gonna be Now I can definitely change my mind. I mean, if I change my mind, I'll let y'all know. But I think it's gonna be the Bucs and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl again. And I think the additions that the Chiefs made to the offensive line, and especially if you look at last year's Super Bowl, there was a lot of passes that were dropped, like just plain old dropped from the Chiefs. I think that the Chiefs will probably win the Super Bowl this year. So I think that they win their second Super Bowl in 3 seasons. So that's who I have. Yeah, man, that's who I have in the Super Bowl. So Chiefs and the Bucs. So those are my predictions, man. Those are the teams that I think we're in an interesting time. As far as, the season's about to start next Thursday. And I'm excited. To me, this is probably the most interesting season because there's a lot of talented teams. Like, there's not like one team that just reigns supreme and then everyone else is just like, it's not the Golden State Warriors in 2017 through 19. It's just, there's Golden State than everyone else. No, there's a lot of great teams, and there's do not be surprised. I mean, there's so good at teams in both divisions or both conferences that the Bucs, even though it's the best team, I mean, I could see the Rams and the Green Bay Packers winning or going to the divisional or conference championship. I can see a Ravens and a Browns. I could see the Titans and Bills making it to the division. Like this is really there's a lot of good teams. So I'm excited to see what happens, man. I really am. So let's move forward. So I guess you can call this the overreact day. I mean, we saw a very interesting, very, very exciting week 1 of college football. And I guess you can call it overreaction because you see a lot of people, and I guess I'll do it now. You see a lot of people that are making just huge predictions due to week 1, especially after what we saw. To me, this is probably one of the most exciting week 1s because you saw a lot of ranked teams that you don't usually see play each other in week 1. Like if they were to play each other, it'll be later in the season, and some like you wouldn't see a Clemson and a Georgia play each other week 1. So the fact that we saw that was just interesting to me. But here's some overreactions. Here's some overtakes, I think you can say, from week 1. And let's start with the Georgia and Clemson game. I guess the biggest overreaction is I don't remember the last time Clemson only scored 3 points. Georgia's defense was ferocious, man. Georgia, and their offense was. I mean, this was a defensive bout. Georgia won 10-7 or 10-3, and this was a defensive bout. Clemson's defense looked incredible. Georgia's defense looked incredible. Clemson's offense looked god awful. DJ, I'm not gonna mess his name up. The quarterback from DJ, the quarterback from Clemson, he just looked lost. We saw that a lot, man. We saw that a lot. It wasn't just Clemson, but we saw that a lot. He had 7 sacks. He got sacked 7 times, had 1 interception. Like, again, this could be just week 1. And, it is just week 1. And this over-exaggeration, but this Clemson... this is a new age for Clemson, and I'm not saying that as far as they're not going to be good, but I'm saying is you're coming off of back-to-back just imagine that. Imagine you're coming off of back-to-back seasons or a few straight seasons with Deshaun Watson as your quarterback. He leaves, and then you have Trevor Lawrence as your quarterback. Like, that's incredible. But now, and while DJ is still incredible, or he just didn't look good. He didn't look good. Clemson's offense didn't look good, but Georgia's offense didn't look good either. Like I don't know what the hell. It was just a defensive bout, and I guess the overreaction is Clemson's done. I know Clemson was ranked 3rd and Georgia was ranked 5th, but Clemson, this isn't the same Clemson that we're used to. So I guess you can say that is their overreaction, or yeah. Another overreaction is, what the hell, Miami? Bro, Miami got... you know what? I'm going to say this. I think it was more Alabama than Miami. Alabama beat Miami 44-13. Yeah, no, that's not really good. That's not good at all. I don't know what it was, man. It was just bad. I will say this, man. Bryce Young looks incredible. Bryce Young looks like, now again, I understand it's only one game, but Bryce Young looks like he can be the best Alabama quarterback we've seen in a while. He looks like, at least right now, he's better than Mac Jones. He threw 344 yards, 4 touchdowns, and I think most of that was in the first quarter, or first half. That meant he looks like he could be in the race for best Alabama quarterback that we've seen in a while, even with Mac Jones, Jalen Hurts, Tua. I don't know what I understand. I guess you can say another overreaction is Alabama just leaps and bounds better than everyone. I thought that we were going to get a good game out of Alabama and Miami because, Miami's ranked 14th. Miami has a lot of good players, but all of their best, from Bryce Young to Brandon Robinson to Jameson Williams. Jameson wasn't he had four receptions for 126 yards. I don't know if Miami just quit. I know Alabama has incredible players. Like I know Alabama is stacked to the brim with players. Like don't get me wrong, I know that. But it just felt it didn't feel fair. It just didn't feel fair. Like at all. So yeah, I don't know. Another overreaction is the Heisman. The Heisman race is definitely shaking up now. I mean, Sam Howell, who the quarterback from North Carolina, he was in the Heisman race. He didn't look good. Went 17 for 32 for 208 yards. They lost to Virginia Tech, 10-17. Spencer Rattler, even though Ohio State did beat Minnesota 35-31, Spencer Rattler kind of looked. I'm sorry. They beat Tulane. I'm sorry, they beat Tulane 40-35. Spencer Rattler, yeah, he threw for 304 yards, but it's against Tulane, and you almost lost to Tulane, and he looked rattled. I know he had one touchdown, but against Tulane, C.J. Stroud, he looked good, but I think the defense, Ohio State's defense, looked bad against Minnesota. But I think the Heisman, DJ, again, the quarterback from Clemson, he was supposed to be a Heisman favorite. He went 19 for 37 for 178 yards, one interception, and 7 sacks. I don't know. I think that the Heisman race got shaken up. I mean, Wisconsin lost to Penn State. That was a good game. They lost 16-10. LSU lost to UCLA 27-38. I think that the Heisman race definitely was shaken up. I probably think the best game was actually on Sunday with Notre Dame against Florida State. Notre Dame winning 41-38. For some reason, I don't understand why Florida State's coach iced his own kicker. I don't understand that at all. But hey, you know what, man? I think the overall happiness is college football is back, and I didn't realize how different it really was without fans compared to with fans. I know towards the end of the year, and of course the national championship, you had fans last year, but if you looked at just look at the Georgia Tech game. And look at the crowd, and of course the Sandman thing, and it was just good to have fans back, man. And it felt good. It felt good, man. It felt really good. And I'm excited. I'm excited from what the season starts. I think next week is going to be big too. The biggest game, in my opinion, is Oregon against Ohio State. Oregon ranked 11th, Ohio State against ranked 4th. I'm excited. I think Kayvon Thibodeau, he spraining his ankle. Hopefully he'll be back for Oregon that game, because they're definitely going to need him. That's probably the best game. Iowa against Iowa State. That's going to be a big game. Outside of that, Texas and Arkansas is going to be okay. Washington and Michigan is going to be good. UCLA or USC and Stanford, of course, Pac-12 teams are going to be good. But yeah, the biggest game is Oregon and Ohio State. And definitely we'll see how that is. But again, I'm excited that college football is back. So let's move forward. So talking about a little WNBA, man, the W25. This is the 25th anniversary of the WNBA, and what they did was they released a list of the 25 best players in the WNBA history, or best and most influential. That's what they were saying. And I'm not going to go over the whole list, but I mean, Simone Augusta was on it, Sue Bird was on it, Swin Cash, Tamika Catchings was on it, Tina Charles, Elena Deladon, Angel McCaultrey, shouts out Baltimore native. Maya Moore was on it. Nneka Bumake, Candace Parker, Kapi Pondexter, Brianna Stewart, Cheryl Swoops, Tina Thompson, Lisa Leslie. There was really good. These are the greatest WNBA players or most influential WNBA players ever. And I'm not really mad at the list. There are some people that, if we're talking about most influential, and I understand that this is for the WNBA, I understand that. So I understand why Cheryl Miller was not on the list. If we're talking about just pure greatest women basketball players of all time, Cheryl Miller definitely needs to be on this list. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Cheryl Miller was a problem. But I understand this is the WNBA list, and she never played in the WNBA. So I understand why she's not on this list. I would think because, the logo pretty much is a silhouette of Rebecca Lobo. I understand she wasn't the greatest WNBA player, but I was surprised that she was on this list. I was surprised Brittany Griner was on this list, honestly. Seeing as I guess how little she's played, and I would think now she's probably more accomplished than Rebecca Lobo. But again, when you're the logo, I would expect you to be on the list. But yeah, man, I'm not really mad at the list, man. Lauren Jackson, Becky Hammond. I'm not really mad at it. This Yolanda Griffin, like this is a good list. Sylvia Fowles, Cynthia Cooper, Tina Charles, shouts out to her. Not North Carolina. Washington Mystics. I'm not really mad at the list. It's a good list. I'm more surprised. I'm more interested right now of which players are playing now that could be in the next wave or could crack this list. Again, Diana Taurasi, she's still playing. Brianna Stewart, she's young and still playing. So, she's going to be here. Her name's going to be a fixture. Candace Parker still playing. Nneka Bumake still playing. Angel McCautry still playing. Brittany Griner still playing. Sylvia Fowles, Elena Deladon, Tina Charles, Sue Bird. I'm just interested to see, maybe looking down the line, what about Jewel Lloyd? Because she's a bucket. How is she going to be able to grace this list? Or maybe Skylar Diggins. Like, is she going to be able to grace this list? I'm excited to see outside the players that are still playing now. That's already on the list. Who's going to be the next batch? Who's going to be what players are going to be able to? What about Sabrina Nadescu? Benasia Laney. Like, I'm just excited to see. The WNBA is better than it's ever been. I think it has more viewers than it's ever been. I think it's more mainstream than it's ever been. There's a lot more platforms that cover it now. The WNBA is probably at the best time of their life at this point. Or let me not say, it's probably the highest in at its prime right now. And the fact that it took 25 years, and I'm not saying that there's no room to grow. I think there's always room to grow, and it will grow. And yeah, man, I'm not really mad at the list. Again, there are some players that maybe could or could not have been on the list. And of course, I think the biggest omission. Now I understand again because she didn't play in the WNBA. Why Cheryl Miller, but if we're talking about just greatest women's basketball players of all time, Cheryl Miller definitely should be on the list. But I understand that she's not. It's the WNBA, top 25. So I understand it, man. And I guess lastly, before we go, Thursday night football, Cowboys in Tampa Bay. I think, again, Dak Prescott not playing in the preseason. Zach Martin, their best offensive lineman, out due to COVID. Tampa Bay being fully healthy. I think Tampa Bay is going to beat or run Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. It's going to blow them out the water, I believe. I would like to be wrong, but I don't. It's going to be tough. But there you have it. That has been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. If you want your Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve, joggers, the link is in the description below. I got multiple colors, multiple designs. Click on design shirt or whatever. click on the color you want. It's yours. Go get your merch today. Hey, go get your merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, so anything will help. Again, I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And until next time, much love.